Hey everyone, this is Blendrix again. This is going to be a bit of a review video. I'm actually taking a course through Berklee, and one of the things that they have me doing as an assignment is demonstrating how I make my music. Specifically, this assignment has to deal with automation and how that can be used to various effects in a set. So, let me show you real quick what kind of instruments we're dealing with here so you understand what's being modulated by the automation. So, standard multi-rack, my Franken synth bass. I've changed it up a little bit from my typical where I have normally just two characters voices and a sub bass. I've added another synthesis engine to try to add a little more grit. So you'll have to let me know what you think. The first one I'm using is Native Instruments FM8. It's frequency modulated synthesis. The next one is additive synthesis. This says Reactor. I'm actually using the Razor plugin within Reactor. And I should point out on the FM8 here, pretty much just I started with presets on both of them and then just tweaked them to where I felt like they were closer to the sound I was going for. So there's quite a bit of modulation you'll hear coming from these voices that doesn't match up with these things out here, and a lot of that's happening due to the envelope modulation within the plugin itself being routed through its own internal effects and things like that. So that part obviously is unrelated to what we're talking about here, but I wanted to clear that up. So this is the crown jewel of this little venture here. So what I did was I have an app on the iPad. It's called Moog. It's made by the people who made that very famous Moog synthesizer that basically started the entire synthesizer revolution. And it's what they call an anisotropic synthesis engine. I haven't done enough research to determine exactly what that means, but I do know that it sounds quite a bit different from every other synth in my collection, even the ones that are in my computer. So I decided I needed to resample it. So I just recorded a quick playing a bass note in here, dropped it into a sampler, and then decided to play around with samplers functionality to try to grid it up a little bit with this this wave shaper, a little bit of filter modulation. And there's actually over here, I'm using the crossfade so that even if I hold the note, it'll just pan back and forth, and having that wide of a crossfade on it makes it so that you don't really hear the looping occurring. So you can just hold the note pretty much as long as you want, and that's kind of the essence of a virtual analog synth. You take a high quality recording of something, an analog signal, and then turn it into a digital version of it. So that's what this is. And then there's more effects further down the chain that all serve to take that very gritty bass and make it so much more ridiculous. So we'll get there in just a sec. And then the sub bass, I'm just using an operator, a pretty standard patch. I think I beefed it up a little bit, gave it some I think I gave it a little bit of coarse on these two oscillators to try to make it so that if your sub doesn't go low enough to pick up the tones that are coming from the main oscillator here, that it'll still pick up a little bit from these other ones here and hopefully still give you that bassy feeling. All right. So, and then each of these, the frequency modulated, the additive, and the sub bass, they're all set up with their own EQs here, and those are tied in. You can see the frequency knob here is macroed. That's macroed to this sub crossover. So right now, as you can see, the knob's turned up there. That's why it's here. Same thing with the additive synth. Now watch what happens when I click on this guy here. So it's this one that's modulated. So the other ones, it was the number 1, which is this guy. So you can imagine this EQ overlaying on top of this EQ. There's a crossover there, and that moves up and down the scale according to basically what this knob says. And then that knob is actually being modulated in the arrangement view here as part of this demo. That's actually, I'm sorry, that's this guy here. And that'd be this modulation. You can see this automation line here. It's taking gradual steps downward, so it's going from where most of the signal is coming from the sub bass to where it's fading in the emphasis on these character voices. And this guy here is the A/B crossfade. So there's this little orange line here, and that is macroed to this A/B crossfade here. So as that knob gets turned, this little orange guy goes across here, and depending on the position of this and the kind of strength of the dark blue that's immediately under that, that determines how much of that signal chain is going to come out the other end. So look at more into the chain selector in Ableton Live if you want to know more about that. But that's I think the chain selector is one of the best things to modulate with automation, to really give your track like an evolving character as it goes. So even if you're playing the same notes, it doesn't sound the same from any one point to the other. So, all right, without further ado, let's hear it. What's happening right now, there's actually, I have an umbrella FX chain here. There's a low pass filter and the side chain compressor tied to the kick and an overall EQ. All of that governs everything that comes out the other end of that chain there. And right now you're actually hearing the effect of that low pass filter getting automated gradually up. And it's actually macroed in with the same knob that does the sub crossover. Okay, so one of the things I wanted to emphasize in this video is that you can spend days plugging in every single individual node on automation lanes like this and get some really precise stuff. The issue with that is of course it takes a lot of time, and also there's almost too much precision to it. I like throwing in something like this. This is a device from the Max for Live pack that comes with Ableton Live Suite. It's an LFO generator, and you can take that LFO and map it to anything in Live, anywhere. And right now, I have it mapped to this macro knob here, which this is just an instrument rack that contains the sample from the Animoog from the iPad, going through the saturator, going through the vocoder, going through this EQ. And that's what you're seeing above here. And then through this. By setting it up to use a raw rate rather than syncing it to the host tempo, it gives it a little bit of sort of error, some grit that's randomness, a little bit. I mean, I tried to set it up so that the timing was approximately right, but by allowing it to be a little bit off, it adds to that sort of gritty character. All right, so let's go and solo this. You can hear what's actually going on. So right here, this automation lane is controlling this knob. So as we play this section here, you'll watch this knob get turned up and down, and you'll watch this wave turn from this steady sawtooth like it looks right now to a crazy I mean, it goes all over the place. And that's one of the reasons why I called the EQ on this instrument the Spaz EQ, because when that modulation starts getting going, you'll watch this thing just start going all over the place, which makes for some really cool sounds. So let's hear it by itself. I turn off the drums too. If you're seeing that LFO as it's just going nuts. So that macro knob is mapped. I'll show you all the things that it's controlling. It's doing this, controlling the formant on the vocoder. Of course, changing all these frequencies. I started with a formant filter, I guess, preset from Live over here, dragged it in here, and then I just assigned all of those different frequency knobs to that same macro knob, and then went into the to the map mode, which is back over here. You can see how they're all arranged differently to make them all behave differently from the same input signal. So, I believe that's where all of the automation on that one ends. But I wanted to also point out, this is not automation related, but it's pretty cool. I learned this technique reading an article on this audio engineering magazine. They were interviewing the studio engineer who was responsible for producing the song Faith by George Michael. And if you remember the vocals in that track, they had a really strong center channel, but they also had this kind of fatness to them, and it was hard to describe. The way that engineer said that they had achieved that was to have one set of vocals that was dry, coming straight down the center, and then they took a couple copies of it, panned them out a little bit to the left and right, and did a little bit of pitch modulation on it, and also added various amounts of delay with the wet turned out. You actually end up getting a much more, it's like the illusion of you're hearing the difference between when the sound arrives at one ear and when it arrives at the other ear. And that's the mechanism your brain uses to determine which direction a sound is coming from. So by exploiting that, we can get this really, really wide sound. So what I've got here is I'm splitting the signal into two different chains. The first one has an 18 millisecond delay. I've got it set up with a link wet's turned all the way up, set it to time with 18 milliseconds, and then the other one has no delay at all. I do have on them, I've got both of them have a slight variations on this little reverb plugin here, just to give them a little bit more space. But you can just hear how huge this sounds. It sounds like it's coming from inside of some sort of cave, but almost all the sound has the illusion that it's coming from way out in your auditory periphery, rather than coming from the middle and then spreading out like most other stuff does when you put it through a delay or a reverb. So let's hear that again. So the one thing I wanted to sort of point out is that there's more than one way to put automation in your tracks. One, of course, is to program it in exactly the way that you want it, and another is to throw a little bit of chaos in there, a little bit of, I mean, it's still controlled chaos, but it's by not syncing everything to the host tempo, you get a little more of that gritty analog kind of feel. So why don't we hear that again one more time? All right, that concludes it. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Please connect with me on the various social media networks. I'm on Twitter, Facebook. I even have a MySpace account again. So yeah, hit me up. Oh, especially SoundCloud. I love to exchange music with people, exchange ideas about production stuff. All right, well, thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.